Welcome in the Dynasty Market Watch, where yesterday's price is not today's price. I'm Todd. I've got Matt and Brian here with me. We're going to get right to it. Rashee Rice is the talk of everything right now. We got to go ahead and just knock that one out. As we're recording here, Rashee Rice is still in limbo on whether he's got a torn ACL or what's going on. But there's been a bunch of trades already happened with him. I know I've made a bunch of offers. I've made offers sending him away, trying to get him. Matt's made some trades with him. I think, Brian, you may have as well. So let's just go ahead and get right to Rashee Rice. We don't even have time for Fat Joe right now. But Matt, what's a trade that you've already made? And then let's just kind of get into what his value is right now in the trade market.
All right. So one team I traded Rice away for Drake London straight up. It's a team I'm competing in. I'm currently in first place. I think that's a great pivot if you can make it. Even if Rice is only out, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, I'm still not that mad about that trade. Like, I get a slightly worse receiver long-term is how I view it. Another trade that I made where I acquired Rice was, again, a team I'm competing on, and you guys are in this league. I traded away Tyreek, Kelsey, and what should be a late third, and I got back Rice and Zach Ertz. And I just kind of stuck Zach Ertz in there because I going to need a tight end to fill in since I traded away Kelsey. And I'm okay just missing out on Tyreek and Kelsey's points until Rice comes back, even if that's next year. I still think I can compete without them. So happy with those trades.
Yeah, Brian, how do you feel about London Rice swap?
I think it's probably like around market-ish. I think getting back London is pretty solid if you believe in him still. I think some people, and maybe we'll talk about this, like Atlanta might be a little overrated as asset central, but he's done some nice things for sure this year. I think it is interesting, kind of given like the yin and yang that like Matt is both traded for and traded him away in 24 hours or so since, like I would assume. So that's interesting.
And then there was one trade I made on Sunday night shortly after the injury that I do kind of regret. You got to be careful when you start trading after having a few beers. I traded away Amon-Ra St. Brown and Dontavian Wicks, and I got back Rashee Rice and Chris Godwin. So Amon-Ra and Wicks for Rashee Rice and Godwin.
First off, classic Matt making just lots of trades as soon as news breaks. Let's just start there.
Yeah.
So Matt's already made 3 of them. I mean, nobody's trading as much as Matt in the Dynasty market. Also, whenever you sent that trade in our group chat, I immediately I said this trade doesn't make sense to me. I don't love that one, but the Rice London, I think that's about where I would be trying to pivot that range. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is the exact pivot I would try to make. I've made the offer of Rice for Brian Thomas Jr., but then the news kind of broke from Adam Schefter that it's unclear whether or not he actually tore his ACL. So I withdrew that one. The person was kind of responded to me that they weren't positive if they wanted to do it yet. So I just withdrew it. Let's wait and find out what the news is on him. I'm assuming by the time people listen to this, they're going to know whether Rice tore or did not tear his ACL.
Yeah. So for me, the inflection point, we've talked so much about this term the last few weeks, but for me, like I'm trying to search out anywhere that Rashee Rice is not on my roster and look to see what the record is. And it's likely pretty good because Rashee Rice has been pretty good and he was probably a pretty good value for them to obtain him at some point in the offseason, rookie draft, whatever the case is. They probably have a good team. I'm trying to give multiple vets, and whether my build is a rebuild, a middling team, if I can afford the depth drop off that like kind of Matt's talking about, I assume with like the Godwin trade that he made. I'm looking to, like, for example, like I offered Deontay Johnson, Stephon Diggs, and what I think is a late second. That got stalemated. I think that's a pretty fair offer. I bet you if you make that in a bunch of different leagues, it's happening.
I think it's a good offer. Yeah.
That's so my target though. Like, so like they're like 3-1, they're 4-0. give them guys, because it's people. The people don't want to turn into a rebuild after being 4-0, 3-1, or whatever the case is that Rashee Rice. So they're panicking to a certain degree.
So the way I'm valuing Rice with a torn ACL is a late 1, late 2-ish, or late 2 or late 1, mid 2. I think that eventually Rice's value is just going to continue to decline as after the surgery throughout the season by the end of the year, and then you're going to be hearing people talk about the suspension. I think that you're going to get him into like that wide receiver, probably 20 to 24 range, which is kind of guys like maybe like around the Pickens range, like Pickens, Romadunze, maybe down to maybe like DK. I think that's where he kind of settles out with a torn ACL, and by the end of the year, and including the suspension. If I'm buying, I'm probably looking in that range, and which probably means I'm not getting anything done right now, and probably I would just rather wait.
Yeah, so you said you'd value him as like a late 1 and 2. I would value him even with the torn ACL. I would value him as like a mid 1 and 2. I think that the consensus is going to be a tiny bit higher than what you were describing. So to me, like
right now, I agree. What I think is that it's going to continue to decline, though.
Yeah, I mean, it could. It's hard to say. I think that's on the low end. And I think there's going to be people like me who still have him at like wide receiver 10, even with the torn ACL. So I think it probably falls in the middle, like in the teens, maybe. It's hard to say, though. There are people wildly different on where they value him currently. It's all kind of in flux right now. I just think whenever he comes back, let's say middle of next season, I think he's just going to walk right back in the same role as being an absolute fucking PPR machine.
I'll just say it. I don't think his value for me doesn't change much at all. The only thing that changes is maybe it becomes a little more situational. That if you're bare bones, it's hard to pay the price that maybe he's arguably worth. But if I have any type of depth, if I am in a 10-team league, I'm not changing his value. And that's why I think it's a great buying point right now. And you can get some maybe found money if there is an injury break in Rashee Rice's favor.
Yeah. So the range that I have him tier wise and for wide receivers, that range starts at wide receiver 10, like you mentioned, Matt. So wide receiver 10 through 16. And those receivers are Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice, and Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that sounds about right.
So just one trade that I made, and this is an example. This is before Monday Night Football. This trade that I made, I traded Tyreek, a guy, and I don't know if that's necessarily even like something that's always obtainable in your leagues, but again, it's an example of like Tua in theory is maybe coming back soon. So there's like maybe Tyreek. He's been down the last couple of weeks, obviously, like value and perception wise. I think Tyreek probably trends in the right direction. This is probably what that person was thinking. They saw Tyreek. I just missed out on a guy and he gave me 0. I can throw him in my lineup. Like these types of things matter. And I get waiting for him too, but if you wait for his value to decline and it doesn't, or you miss out on the window of the person maybe calms down, or they already sell him to somebody like Matt and I, and then Matt and I are saying, nah, 2 ones, buddy. Like that's the risk you run sometimes, like sitting back. Sometimes it works out great, and other times it's going to bite you in the ass. Like I had a trade with Zoltan that I declined before Sunday. It was for Kenneth Walker, not to change the subject too much. Oh, yesterday's price is not today's price. I went to the same offer. Zoltan said, nope, I'm all set. I'm going to shop them. And you snooze, you lose sometimes.
Yeah, and that's why it's good to have a couple buddies or whatnot to bounce trade scenarios off of, like in a group chat. Like us three will sometimes talk about different offers we're making. And once you had said that you had gotten a bite on the Tyreek for Rice offer, it did it hadn't even occurred to me to try and make that trade. And then so I went to my only team with Tyreek, offered him for Rice. His counter was Tyreek and Kelsey for Rice, which value wise I thought was pretty fair. So I was like, all right, let me throw in a late third. You throw in Ertz. Let's go. and then got that trade done. So like that was a trade I would not have done if like you hadn't said, oh, hey, I got this accepted. I was like, all right, yeah, I'll definitely do that.
If only there was a
speaking-
podcast that you could talk to on like a Discord channel, for example. Like, I don't know who
Exactly.
has one of those, but maybe somebody.
Yeah, check out our Discord, everyone. Links on the Twitter.
And speaking of yesterday's price is not today's price, Brian, play that Fat Joe.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
All right, Matt, yesterday's price is not today's price. We've talked Rashee Rice. Let's hit some of those vets. There's been a ton of value moves over the last few days. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it.
Yeah, I think there's a number of big name veterans that are disappointing so far this season, and people aren't quite sure what to do. They don't want to overreact to a slow start from proven elite guys, but you also don't want to underreact. And like now we're about 25% of the way through the season. It's time to start adjusting some values and some priors. So we're looking at guys like Mahomes, Bijan, Robinson, Brees, ETN, Andrews, Brandon Ayuk. There's a lot of them kind of. So we'll start out with Mahomes. Like, let's say we did a first round startup draft tonight. Where do you guys think, Brian, where do you think Mahomes would get drafted?
I'm just going to do a startup draft.
Yeah. I do, Todd. Yeah, I do want to do a startup draft, but for right now, why don't we just do podcast talk a little bit? Mahomes, for me, it wouldn't change a lot. I think there's a better likelihood that maybe he drops to like 104 or something like that, but like I can't imagine he's going to drop off too much in terms of an actual startup. I know Todd's going to disagree with this vehemently. He does not have his camera on, but I can see smoke coming through his nose. So at any moment, I'm going to be interrupted by someone, and it'll be Todd.
Well, here we go. So I just don't understand the point of having Patrick Mahomes as QB2 at this point. I'm going to assume that the reason that you have him at 104 is you're just putting a couple of receivers ahead of him. But Mahomes has just not been very good. And I don't have an issue really with saying like QB 3, 4, 5, like wherever you want to call it. But he should be like in a tier of a bunch of other quarterbacks that are pocket passers that are also kind of blah as well. And so having him above like Jaden Daniels, even to me, like that sounds crazy to say, but like I just don't understand the point of having Mahomes so high when he's not scoring the points. Like it's just not happening. It didn't happen last year. It's not happening this year. I think he's gone like some absurd number of like 15 games without scoring 21 fantasy points or something like that. Obviously, it depends on your scoring format, but he's just not putting up the numbers. And if you wanted to argue, okay, I still have him QB 2 or 3, but I've got like 4 or 5 receivers ahead of him, I could shrug my shoulders and say, okay, that's fair. And you're just kind of docking the whole QB market as a group. That's fine. But I've been pretty out on Stroud. I've been pretty out on like Burrow. Like, how is he very different from these guys? I just don't see the difference. And like Jaden Daniels is obviously good. I think he's obviously pretty good, and he rushes. So now we've been here before. We've seen guys like Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields look pretty good for a bit, and then they flail out. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about with rushing quarterbacks, but he looks like a very good passer. I think it's probably unfair to even put Jaden Daniels in the same category as those two guys, given the numbers that he put up in college and the numbers that he's put up so far in a short career.
Yeah, I think Daniels is the guy that to me has like the argument to be up here in this conversation and potentially above Mahomes. I have no problem if anyone prefers Daniels over Mahomes right now, given the disparity in scoring. Daniels is really the only guy though, right? Like Lamar is not scoring like an elite option right now. He's a little bit older. So I wouldn't have him there. Jalen Hurts is having a down.
Lamar's scoring more than Mahomes though.
Right. No. Yeah. So I mean, if you want to have Lamar up here, I guess that's fine. But to me, he's not scoring enough to really justify it. And like almost the same way that you're saying with with Mahomes. Like and okay, I'll take that back. Lamar's doing a little bit better than I thought. So
He's QB3 right now.
Yeah.
Obviously depends on the scoring, but he's QB. I've got him QB3 in like a 6-point passing league. Jaden Daniels is QB5. Josh Allen QB6. Allen's obviously had 2 stinkers and then 2 really good ones. Burrow's not been that bad. Their defense is horrible. I expect them to be throwing a ton. Kyler, CJ Stroud, like Hurts, like I don't even like if you were to say I think Mahomes doesn't finish as a QB1 this season, I don't think that's that crazy. I that might be close to the line for him.
I think similar to everyone that bitches about like NBA and stuff, like there's a degree of load management going on and going through the motions in Kansas City. And I think it's been amplified by obviously their postseason success. So they're seeing that like, hey, we can fuck around and like win most of the games and maybe get some questionable calls that go in our favor pretty often. And this and that, we can have home field advantage and then we turn it on when we need to. Like Kelsey, for example, I think he still has plenty left in the tank in terms of like any one game he could go off. He just doesn't feel like he needs to, and the track record has proven that he doesn't need to. So I think that would be my concern. Is it's. I think everyone agrees he's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the league, like just in terms of like quarterback play. And I think that's part of the reason why he gets a lot of those tiebreakers that you were talking about, like similar pocket passers in a tier. I think he gets tiebreaker 1, 2, and 3 because of those things that we're talking about. And I'm not even like, I don't know where I would take him. I wouldn't want to be in the position similar to like, I didn't really want to take Jalen Hurts this year in a startup this past offseason. Like, I don't want to be in that position. I want to be Josh Allen, or I want to be back where like the decision's made for me. That's where I would want to get defaulted into a Mahomes decision versus like, I'm going to trade up like how it maybe he was viewed a few years ago. I'm going to trade up and get Mahomes and give up this, and that. I think a lot of people probably wreck their teams doing that. Not naming any names, but I might have too. Who knows? So I think it's kind of interesting. Like, obviously, one of, if not the best players in the league, really successful team, seems to have weapons. They just don't give
going to be around another decade. Yeah, like all those things kind of play into that value, but you're just not getting the fantasy points from it. And he was obviously awesome for 2022, 2021, 2020. He was great in all those years, but it's just not happening now. I mean, I think I would have him in the same tier as like, sounds crazy, but like Jordan Love,
Sam Darnold.
Yeah, yeah, Sam Darnold, like Kyler, CJ Stroud, Lamar. You could put all right, Daniels. You could put all those guys in a tier together. Give me the one that's the cheapest, and let me just say he is nowhere close to the cheapest.
Well, not right now. I think the winds are shifting a little bit.
They are.
But yeah, I mean that's really the bottom line. If you have like a top 5 pick in a startup, you want an absolute difference maker. And right now we're going on a full calendar year of Mahomes not being a difference maker in the regular season. Like Brian alluded to their postseason success. It's a recipe that they know they can get away with. So I don't really see them changing. I think a lot of us had hopes that drafting Xavier Worthy in the first round, bringing in Hollywood Brown, like, okay, it's going to be wheels up. They're ready to like let the cannons fly again. And teams just aren't allowing it. The teams are just making them dink and dunk their way down the field. And Mahomes is smart enough to take what the defense gives him, more or less. So we talked Rashee Rice, that void, assuming he's out. Kelsey will probably step in like he did this past week against the Chargers. So, I mean, if you have Kelsey, hopefully you can just use him as a starter moving forward. I think probably the most likely scenario, we're talking about underachieving bets. I think most likely scenario is that the person that has Kelsey knows that the Rashee Rice is, he's going to be out. And so now they're not moving him. So he's probably not really much of a buy opportunity for Kelsey anymore. But if you've got him, I expect him to produce here moving forward. Yeah, I'd agree with that. As long as Rice is out, I expect Kelsey to be pretty good. I've seen a lot of people talk about like Kelsey's definitely redraft tight end 1 the rest of the season. That I do not agree with.
Who would you have as tight end 1? Kelsey. I wouldn't bet
Not a long
Kelsey
list
against
of
the
suitors.
field.
That's like
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I
that. I
wouldn't
think
bet
that's the
Kelsey
point
against the
here.
field, but I would take Kelsey. I would have to, if I was doing a ranking rest of season, I think I would just have to put him at 1. But I mean, it's a joke of like what's around
The
him.
guy I'm most confident that will be
Mark
better
Andrews.
than Kelsey the rest of the season is Kittle if he plays.
Okay, I like that one.
But
Yeah, I like
yeah,
that.
I still think there's a chance Bowers or McBride or even Laporta are better rest of the
Well,
season.
yeah, as far as like a chance, yeah, I think that's possible. But
Okay, so I should say an equal chance. Like I don't think Kelsey has a better chance than any of those guys.
I think if we're doing video game turn injuries off, it's Kittle all day, and like I don't think there's any debate really available for short term success. I think you can debate Dynasty, obviously, and he's not Dynasty tight end number 1, but guy's an absolute freak show. If we're just saying, hey, he's going to play 16 games, sign me the hell up.
Yeah, I mean, Kittle
someone
has gained value, not even really doing much in the last 2 weeks. I mean, he was out a week and he played. I think he had a pretty good game, but he's really not done a whole lot to improve his value himself. But everybody around him has cratered, and so Kittle now worth every bit of like a late 1.
Someone that I am not hitching my wagon to, nor excited about short or long term, is on a different team, but he plays the same position, or I'll call it similar position, because you usually have to get like catches and stuff to be a tight end that's viable in fantasy. But that is Kyle Pitts, and just the overall potentially overrated Atlanta offensive assets. So Pitts, Kirk Cousins is just kind of getting shit on. Bijan, I think people are starting to sour a little bit.
Yeah, my greatest claim to fame here is being out on Kyle Pitts like week 3 last year and staying firm. So I'm proud of that one.
Yeah, that's a major win. I have realized too late that I was wrong on Kyle Pitts. You basically can't sell him for shit now. Any second, any year I'm taking. I'm not going to sell him for like fucking KDOT, and so like I guess I'm just going to go down with the ship.
Maybe I try to swap with the Quentin Johnston owner. Could you? I'm just thinking of like terrible players that have regained value. Could you swap him for Quentin Johnston? Probably.
Maybe. Probably. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure you could. Really, there's no Pitts trade that someone could bring to me where they're trading away Pitts right now. And they're like, oh, did I fuck up? Like, no, you got Pitts off your roster. You're fine. Like, if you want to trade him for 2/3, I'm not going to yell.
I would definitely.
Hey, Matt, hold my beer. I have a trade that I acquired Kyle Pitts. It was before this past game, so I'll cut me a little slack here. But there's some big names, and I want to hear your thoughts on it then. So I gave away Neighbors after his injury, not long term, 25-2, 26-2, and Oregon great Troy Franklin. And I received Justin Herbert, Garrett Wilson, DeAndre Swift, who's a loved one on this podcast as well, and Kyle Pitts. So that is Neighbors 2-2, Troy Franklin for Justin Herbert, Garrett Wilson, Kyle Pitts, DeAndre Swift. So that will be my second share of trading away Neighbors since he's been drafted, and I feel sick to my stomach on both of them.
So that's basically, I'm gonna unwrap that one as the 2-2s. Let's just say that that's worth Pitts and Swift. I would rather have 2-2s than Swift and Pitts, but let's just do that for ease of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's basically Neighbors for Garrett Wilson and Herbert. And you are sick about it, you said?
I'm sick because of what Matt's talking about, that I'm bringing on these two guys that I don't want anything to do with, right? So, but the reason I wanted to bring this up was Matt was like, I don't see there's a trade possible out there that if someone's acquiring, if you're trading away Kyle Pitts, like you were saying basically that like if you trade away Kyle Pitts, then you're winning no matter what. So
I like that version.
Win this trade. Pitts and like basically if someone dropped Pitts from their roster, I wouldn't be mad at them.
Okay.
It's the Quentin Johnson like last year when someone was offering you him like a throw and be like, no, remove him and I'll accept. You have to
now it's a better offer.
I'm just sick of Pitts. Like he basically. I mean, there was some people sharing clips from this past week's games. Guy fucking moves like a 50-year-old on the field. Like I don't know if he's hurt still. I don't know what it is. He looks
I'm
like
so tired of
shit.
the injury excuse for Kyle Pitts.
Right. Yeah, no. So I'm with you, Todd. I don't want to hear any excuses but like there's something that I don't know what it is. There's some reason. Maybe he just sucks now, but he looks like shit and he did not a few years ago. And he's only like 23 years old. There's no reason.
Let's wrap up Kyle Pitts, but I've got a couple final comments. I'm going to unwrap Kyle Pitts again, I guess. So first off, I'm going to the Falcons-Bucks game on Thursday. So I'll get to up in person, get to see Kyle Pitts get 1 target and 0 catches. The second question I've got, Brian, Mark Andrews or Kyle Pitts?
No.
I think it's a
question mark. No question mark.
I'll take Andrews.
Without doubt. I know that Andrews has been good at one time. I know that if Andrews went somewhere else, I don't know that he'd be good, but I think he would be good. If Pitts went somewhere else, like if somebody traded for Pitts for like a 5th next week, I would still think Pitts is probably going to suck. But if somebody traded for Andrews, I'd be like, oh, okay, there's an opportunity here for Andrews to turn it around. So
Mark Andrews looks like someone that I would imagine he looks like someone that would be made out of tissue paper would look, in my opinion.
The
like
Michelin
it just
Man?
kind of he just like flips and flops and like crumbles. Like if there was a stiff breeze last game and he just kind of like fell to his knees and died like on the field.
Well, that's what he did when he got a target, his only target. He basically just fell to his knees and died.
Yeah. Fair.
So with Andrews, I saw someone else say this and I think it makes sense to me. So Andrews had the car accident in early to mid-August. He missed 2 weeks of practice, came back to the field. He also had tightrope surgery, which is like some kind of surgery to do with repairing your ankle this offseason. Someone said they're basically just treating Andrews like he's on IR right now. Like just treat him like he's Hawkinson. Don't put him in your lineup. Wait until he has a couple good games in a row. Then maybe you trust him, and I'm sure he'll probably fuck you over and then go back to a goose egg. But like, basically, just act like he's not on your roster. Don't trade him for like a 3rd round pick, and reevaluate come week 8, week 9. To me, that makes sense. That's like how I'm handling my Andrews shares for now.
I'm holding bags with him and Pitts. I think.
What would you buy Andrews for? Like if you were a tanker and you were like, maybe I can use Andrews next year. Maybe he goes somewhere else, or maybe they just decide they change their offense next year. What would you pay for Mark Andrews? I'm not paying anything for Kyle Pitts.
I'm not either. A 4th round pick is all I would like. Nothing.
Right. What about Andrews?
Like treat it like a flyer.
What about Andrews?
I would pay a late 2 for Andrews.
So I went through my leagues, and there was a couple opportunities where I could have sent a late 2 for Andrews. And as I was like preparing to do it, I was like, yeah, I'm for sure going to send a late 2. I maybe even send a mid 2. And I went in to send the trade and I could not bring myself to hit send for Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
And that was before the goose egg on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I don't blame anyone for just not wanting to deal with the situation. To me, a late 2 is, I mean, whatever. You can throw a late 2 in the trash and like it shouldn't theoretically kill your team build. I'm willing to kind of gamble that he returns to form in the next year for a late 2.
Oh, like the reverse, it could be a boat, but it's just like reverse and shittiness. Like it could be something shitty. Like
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so we have a lot of concerns with Andrews and Pitts. Brian, you kind of mentioned the rest of the Falcons. I have 0 concerns about Drake London. Like I think Drake London is ascending. Dwayne McFarland.
The usage is ascending. Like I think he's got most first read targets in the NFL the last couple of weeks or something like 50% first read targets. They are feeding him.
Yeah, what is his ultimate dream scenario? Like he has an unbelievable season throughout this entire season. What is his peak, Matt? Like dynasty perspective wise, like dynasty wide receiver, startup draft. Like what would you trade for?
I'll answer this. His peak is
I
where
feel
he's
like
at now.
He's priced at his ceiling. That's
Yeah, totally
my
agree.
concern with him.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. Or preseason, he was priced at his ceiling. He's now, in retrospect, it was his ceiling.
I mean, I get why you guys would say that. I don't really think I agree with that. Like, I mean, to me, he could easily just from rest of the season average 18 points a game, and I don't know where that ends up. There's like 7 dynasty wide receivers. I do not see him catching. I could see him ending up in like the 8 to 10 range.
So when I watch Drake London, he just seems very unathletic. It's just not aesthetically pleasing. I just don't see even if you wanted to try to compare him to like Mike Evans is way more creative with his body than Drake London to me. But they're feeding Drake London in the intermediate, and I think that I do think that he can be like a high-end wide receiver too, and justify his dynasty price, maybe where he's at now, like in the wide receiver 15 range. But I do feel like his ceiling was where he was preseason, like wide receiver 10. And you kind of said that, Matt. I mean, you just said you don't think he can get to wide receiver 7. So we're kind of splitting hairs.
Yeah. I think he's going to be like, I think he can live in that like 8 to 12 range for the next few years if things go well. I don't really agree that he looks like clumsy or unathletic. Like I think he's a very fluid athlete for his size, and like I think he's an awesome route runner. I think he gets open a lot. I think that's the reason that he's earning the target share that he is. And I think really it's just Kirk Cousins is coming off Achilles injury. He's in a new offense with a new system, all that shit. And, they're going to take probably a half season to get all this shit together and get it right. And so I do think his increased usage last 3 weeks does kind of portend to a better finish the rest of the season than he's had so far. But I mean, we've done this dance with the Falcons the last couple of years, so I definitely understand the skepticism with London for sure.
And just to clarify, like for me, when I'm saying underachieving, overrated, whatever the case is, doesn't mean they're not good players. Same with like Bijan. I think Bijan is the most explosive and coolest running back in the league. Like I think he's the best, but I don't think at any point is his price ever going to have any possibility of growing at this point. He's gonna have to have multiple Christian McCaffrey type seasons to really get him like to where he gained value from what he was viewed on such a pedestal, right? And I think Drake London was similarly like he had a lot of stands, and that boosted his value before he was ready to really achieve that. Now that maybe he is ready, like you're speaking to, like I think he's improved as a player since he's come in the league. Because I think one of the things I had concerns with was that he was a basketball player in college and didn't look like he moved around like a basketball player would. So that was one of my concerns. But I think he does look better this year. What I really long-winded want to get at here is, Matt, would you take, if you had Garrett Wilson, are you trading him for Drake London?
No.
Yeah, give me Garrett Wilson still. I think better days are ahead for Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they are. Man, Garrett's been disappointing too. I think he's fairly
disappointing.
Yeah, I think he's fairly dropped to almost that Drake London territory where he is.
That's the tier I gave earlier.
Yeah, he is now considered like a low-end wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, and I think that's probably where he should be valued.
What's that range worth to you all in draft capital? I'll kind of recite while you think about it. I'll recite the players just one more time. So that's like Chris Olave, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice, Brian Thomas Jr. You could maybe include Devontae Smith in that group as well. What would you guys value them, Brian, as in terms of draft picks?
1 and 2 or 1 and 2 twos maybe. That's where I would like it. I would like the one to be like somewhere like middling to late to buy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you're
So that,
selling,
like,
maybe like 2 1s.
yeah, I would
Yeah, I
hold
think
I
that's
would
the
hold
same.
firm because I think all of those guys could grow into like a little something or at least get back to where they were.
Yeah. So Matt, you sell price, buy price. Sometimes for you it's the same. I know. So what are
Yeah, I'm not like you motherfuckers always trying to club someone. Like my buy and sell price is about the same. Like
shots fired?
no, but like yeah, my buy and sell price is generally about the same. I would say it's like about a mid one and mid two, maybe 2 2s. Like Brian said, if if it's like a late one, maybe 2 late ones. I I had an offer for someone sending that to me recently where they are a really strong team and they offered me their next 2 firsts for Garrett Wilson. And I thought it was fair and I just couldn't do it. Like I need the one that I'm acquiring to have some kind of upside.
Yeah, I offered on 2 occasions. I offered. This was after week 4, so after the poor performance against the Broncos. I offered a first and 2 2s for Garrett Wilson. Both times smash declined. So it seems like it's still close to those 2 1s for Garrett Wilson. I do have another data point for Garrett Wilson. I did trade away Garrett Wilson just today for Puka straight up on a team that's contending, and they obviously need some points as they're heading into bye week season. So Garrett Wilson for Puka, that one got done.
I had somebody yesterday offer me. He offered me his Garrett Wilson for my Nico Collins, and I offered to try and help me understand how he was living 4 weeks ago and how to capture that for future endeavors.
Yeah.
I don't even think 4 weeks ago that was getting done. After week 1, I think we immediately moved Nico ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know what I would. I don't even know what I would need to downgrade from Nico to Garrett. Like I almost want to say a first. Like
Every bit of a first. Every bit.
Nico's him.
Yeah.
I mean, Nico, let's just quickly, Nico, in the tier with Jetta and Neighbors, yes or no?
There, no, but at the top of the next tier for me.
Fair, same. Brian?
Yeah, I think it's something if you have Jefferson and or Neighbors and someone was like, hey, how much, like if they were like Nico Collins 1 for 1, you wouldn't say, hey, screw you. You would open a negotiation, right? I think it's enough that like it's not insulting. It's within range that we like, okay, can we like fiddle around and get like a second 2-3 swap or something like that? Maybe, I don't know. For some people it could be. To me, like he's definitely, for me, definitely wide receiver 3 though.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So more disappointing guys. We've talked Garrett Wilson. We've talked. Let's go to ETN. I don't even like talking about ETN. I just Matt does because he just traded for him. So let's just hear that one, Matt. Yeah.
I don't even. Yeah, I don't really know what to do with ETN.
I do. Fireman.
I traded for him, and it was kind of a stupid trade. So I traded Romo Dunze and Keon Coleman, and I got back Diggs, Christian Kirk, and ETN. And this is on a team that I kind of rebuilt over the last year, and I am competing in this league. Brian, you're in the league, and I'll say that I did kind of buy ETN off name value, and he's not someone that I have a lot of shares of, so I haven't been like super in tune with how the splits are going with him and Tank Bigsby. But after I bought him, I'm like, I did some more research. I'm like, man, this guy might be losing his job like without even an injury. Bigsby just looks better this year.
He does.
I don't know. I don't know how to value ETN. I wouldn't say he sucks now and shit like that. Like I still think he's probably worth like an early 2.
Oh yeah, every bit of that. I was gonna say, like, I mean, yeah, multiple 2s.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, the way you were saying, like,
No, I mean,
thought you were,
I'm being a little bit
I thought
facetious.
you were putting him in
I've
Kyle
got a
Pitts
couple shares of him,
territory.
and I'm just tired of him. But I do think that we are entering a range with ETN where the Jags are 0-4, the only winless team in the NFL. Doug Peterson is under fire. I do think and he's been obviously worse than Bigsby. We're entering a range where they could say, we're going to make a statement here. We're just, a staff that's upset and we're bored, and we're just going to bench ETN, or we're going to make ETN the 2, or we're going to like just kind of throw our anger out at ETN. Like, I feel like coaches do that sort of thing. I'm not banking on that happening, but I think that we have entered a world where that is possible, that ETN goes into a game and we're like, wow, ETN had 5 carries. Now, maybe that bounces back the following week, but if that happened week 5, I'd be like, wow, that's crazy. I'm not that shocked, though.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is any value insulation that ETN had this offseason is being whittled away. And like he could just like you said, he could just get 5 carries next game. Tank Bigsby gets 14 carries, and all of a sudden people are really panicking. That's not going to happen with the other running back that is disappointing, I think, is Breece Hall. And I think going into this past week, I think people already kind of had their eyebrow raised that, like, damn, Braylon Allen is really cutting into some of this work. Braylon Allen looks good when he's on the field. Now, this past week, you have Braylon Allen clearly outperforming Breece Hall, rushing for more yards, scoring more fantasy points, taking a goal line carry away from Breece Hall. And I think it's fair to be pretty concerned about Breece Hall's value right now, considering he was like a consensus top 24 startup pick, a consensus top 3 running back. A lot of people had him like 1A and 1B with Bijan back in August. And, the Jets are another team that have been disappointing overall for fantasy. And I think it's kind of fair to knock Breece's value a little bit right now and say, no, he's not worth like 3 firsts. He's worth maybe 2 firsts. I wouldn't pay that right now.
Brian, rank your top 5 or 4 running backs.
So I think, first of all, I think Dynasty, we all know this is like a shotgun coronation business that we're in, right? So like we want to get that next running back in ASAP. Like, it cannot come fast enough. And our group chat was talking about someone that's in college that I'm not going to bring up right now, but someone, and probably everyone knows who he is, but like, that is something that I think is a real deal. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, and I'm wrong a lot, and I might be wrong here still. Breece Hall was like a major talking point for me last year, being overrated. It's not that he's a bad player, it's that he was overrated because we launched him to the top of the list for no reason. Okay, so running backs. Sorry, I went and started gloating. So I definitely have Bijan above him, above Breece. I have Gibbs above Breece.
And the question is, do you
I have Achane above Breece?
There we go. Yes, sir.
And then I guess you could start considering it, but like also like there's also like, why can't I start considering like someone of the Kenneth Walker nature? Like, just because he's not as sexy, like that's what it comes down to. Like, he's pretty freaking athletic. He seems to be on an offense that wants to use him. I think his only knock is health, but
and he doesn't catch a lot of passes. So like I think it's
if Breece Hall catches 6 passes for 14 yards and has 10 carries for 11 yards and no touchdowns because the Jets suck and they just are terrible. I'll take Kenneth Walker. So yeah, fuck it. Kenneth Walker above Breece Hall. That's my take.
I love it, man.
Fuck it.
Yeah, I mean,
I mainly asked that question just to hear you say Achane ahead of him. I got my money's worth with that question.
Yeah, I love the Ken Walker over him. I mean,
I'm gonna get so many shitty offers.
I'm not gonna knock you for that. Like, if I'm starting a team right now, there's there's no question I'm taking Ken Walker over Breece Hall. Like if it's
my
not
goodness,
fantasy
here we
related,
go.
Let's go.
Man,
I
I'm about to
definitely
be recruited as
Breece
a journalist.
Breece Hall has never really impressed me as a runner. If you go back and look at all his like box scores, etc., like he always runs for 4 yards a carry. If you watch the game, he does have a lot of burst to him. Like if he gets a clearer lane, he can break open a 70-yard run. But if there's some traffic on the line and he's got to like vision his way out of it, he's not going to. His success rates are always pretty bad because of that. And I think we're seeing that come to fruition this year. His work in the receiving game is giving him a healthy buffer to score points. But that receiving work disappeared this last week, and Breece finished with what, like less than 1 point or some shit like that?
1.8 in half PPR. So I'll be the voice of reason here. I'll jump
Give
in.
me JT too. JT too.
Oh yeah, Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, there you go. So I'll be the voice of reason here. I'll be the voice of the listener, and I'm listening to this, and I'm saying, "Oh my gosh, these guys are freaking nuts." They have Ken Walker and Jonathan Taylor ahead of Breece Hall. They're freaking crazy. But I think that if you're the listener to that, you should probably sit back and say, okay, maybe I don't have those guys ahead of Breece Hall. I probably still have Breece Hall ahead, but it's not that crazy. It's really not. If you really like think about the fantasy points, you think about their situation, the fact that Braylon Allen is obviously a dude, and the Seattle's very committed to Ken Walker. I mean, Charbonnet was pretty good in his games, and then all of a sudden they come back and Ken Walker makes Charbonnet not even relevant. So yeah, I mean, I would have never even considered what you guys said before you all kind of went on a rant, but I kind of don't disagree. I don't know if I agree, but I don't disagree.
So
yeah,
Breece. Let me say this: Breece Hall should not be in the same tier as Bijan, Gibbs, and Achane. I'm not saying Achane's in that tier, but he shouldn't be in that tier.
The big takeaway that I think you can take from this whole thing, whether you believe the Kenneth Walker or not, there's probably a gap in market where you can. There's on every planet you could get a plus to Kenneth Walker to trade your Breece Hall, and I think that is what's kind of interesting and what like Matt is the king of doing those types of trades where it's like I see a perceived gap in the market, in my opinion. And I go and get that extra guy that then either can grow into something that really helps take my team to the next level, or then I can flip that guy and get 2 more. And it's just a compounding interest over and over and over again that Matt does. And he'll trade away the guy 5 times. And all of a sudden he's got Josh Allen and Lamar as his quarterbacks. And you're like, whoa, what the hell just happened? And it's awesome.
Yeah, so like I mean, it does sound like I was kind of knocking Breece a lot right there, and just to kind of clarify my stance here, I do think Breece Hall deserves to be in the same tier with Bijan Robinson. I just think both of them deserve to be valued a lot less than they currently are, and a lot less than they were, especially a month ago. There's 7 wide receivers I would take over all of them, without hesitation.
And I think that's the nature of the RB market.
You were very firm on that, Matt. I'll give you credit. You were saying that like preseason, off season, you were like Bijan's overrated. It's not that he's bad; he's overrated in the market.
Yeah, and I still I think Bijan, Breece, and Gibbs and Achane, I think they all deserve to be grouped together near the top. And if you want to throw Ken Walker in there, that's fine. But
while we're at it, Jonathan Taylor.
But yeah, I would just lower all of them.
I'm drawing the line at James Cook, though, just to be clear.
And this is why, even though I got pretty unlucky with it, this is why I definitely feel a little bit justified in how high I always valued CMC. Because when he's on the field, you don't have to do any projection bullshit with him and hope for 25 points a game. He's just going to fucking give you that. And that's pretty valuable, and that's why I think it's fair that he was valued as highly as he was until he died recently. Rest in peace. But
R.I.P. Cavs.
All right,
you're paying a late one for Ken Walker. Yes or no?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get him for a late one right now.
I
can
offered a
Yeah.
late.
I
So
don't think you could have before the weekend. I think you could have before the weekend started, but now
before
after that
the weekend started, I tried the offer I mentioned earlier with Zoltan. I offered a late 1 and a 3, and he countered back a different 1. I have 2 1s, a little less late. So we'll say, but it's still a really good team. So we'll say
mid to late.
10th, 11th, 9 to 11 pick, we'll say. He countered me that first round pick plus Ray Davis, and I just played hardball and didn't take it. And now I sent that offer today, not expecting to be accepted, but maybe he just wants to get Ken Walker off his team because he's currently taking. And no dice skin. I think he'll get more than that from someone in the league at this point. So missed opportunity.
Yeah, and that's one that I have some regrets over is that I did kind of think about that while Ken Walker was out for these couple weeks. I'm like, man, this is such a nice role in this offense. I should go try and buy some Ken Walker. And I didn't even really try. And after like a 30-point game or whatever it is he scored this past week, it's tough to buy him high after a game like that. But I wouldn't blame anyone if they went for it. I mean, I think he's worth like a mid 1 and mid 2 right now or something like that.
All right, so we've talked about some of these QBs. We talked about some of the guys in the first round of startups. Let's not spend a lot of time on it, but Malik Neighbors, Brian, tell me where you would take him in a startup, and then what I guess who would you take him above, like quarterback wise, receiver wise? It sounded like you had him at wide receiver 2 or 1 earlier.
Definitely wide receiver 2.
Any quarterbacks you're taking ahead of him?
Yeah, definitely. Josh Allen is a no-brainer. He's tier 1 and everyone else is tier 7. So yes, Josh Allen, definitely Jefferson. I think I would probably still take Stroud. I know you don't like that, but those are probably the 3. And I'm still holding out. I'm less confident about Mahomes than I was entering the year for sure in terms of like
fantasy, Stroud really quick. Relevance. Would you take Stroud ahead in 4 or 5 point per passing touchdown leagues?
Yeah. Those are the
kind of
3
changes
though.
for me a little bit.
Those are 3.
As you move to 6 point per passing touchdown league, it kind of increases those pocket passers a little bit more. Okay, Matt, you go.
Yeah, so like 90% of my leagues are 5-point pass touchdown leagues. So that's just the format I always have in mind while talking about these guys. I would take Neighbors 103 in a startup. I would take Josh Allen over him, and I would take Justin Jefferson, and that's the end of the list. If he continues doing this for a whole season, I'm okay moving him ahead of Jefferson. It's going to take him doing it for a whole season for me to make that move, though. I think Jefferson's done enough to earn that respect that I can't put a rookie above him after 4 games, even though those 4 games have been literally unimaginably good. I just need to see a little bit more, and that's really the only reason. And I think Jaden Daniels is the other guy that you can consider. Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah. Neighbors would have to do what he's doing around what he's doing for 2 years, in my opinion, to pass Jefferson without an injury for me.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Todd.
I'm going to basically just co-sign everything Matt just said. 103, Josh Allen, Jetta, Malik Neighbors, and then the 104 would, for me, if I was on the clock at 104, I do not want to make a selection. Just to be clear, I want to trade back. But if you forced me into making a pick right now, I would take Jaden Daniels 104. But this is about Neighbors. So Neighbors, you said, Matt, he's got to do it for the rest of the year. I think that's about right where I agree with. So I've seen a lot of maybe the claim of, if you think that Neighbors and Jefferson are going to score the same amount of points the rest of the season, then you should go ahead and have Neighbors ahead. while I kind of agree with that, I think that you have to also consider the fact that there's a world that, yes, Neighbors and Jefferson score the same amount of points the rest of the season, but then next year things kind of change for Neighbors. Like maybe they bring in another receiver, or maybe the quarterback changes, or maybe like Dable gets fired and things sort of change in the, like maybe he's not getting a 38% target share. He's obviously absolute stud player. So I'm not taking anything away from him. He's going to earn an extreme target share. He's going to get extreme volume, but maybe he's like 2 points per game less than Jefferson next year because things kind of change. Where I feel like when I go into a season, Jefferson is scoring 20 points per game. Like he just is. Like there's no way around it. Whereas that things could maybe change for Neighbors. I'm not saying they will, but it's why I would be in agreement with you that for today, I'm putting him at wide receiver 2. But if he scored the same or more for the whole rest of the season, yeah, maybe then I'm kind of looking at moving Neighbors to wide receiver 1. But I agree at needing to see a little bit more.
This is an interesting thing, and I know both of you are high on Puka, as am I. But is it the flashiness of Neighbors being in New York, the prospect quality, like difference between Neighbors and Puka? But like Puka had a pretty historic rookie season, and people didn't remotely entertain him outside of like wide receiver, we'll say 5 talks.
Yeah.
Right. Like
I think part of it is, well, 2 things. I think Stafford and McVay, him having those as his QB coach combo and knowing that they might funnel to him more, I don't know. And then also, you mentioned the prospect level. That's the other part. But it's a reason why we've kind of, as a group, been really high on Puka. I mean, I traded for him today. Like I'm very high on Puka. I think that if he can come back and get back to health, then he has every bit of justification to be like at that wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 level. And if he could get rolling again, wide receiver 3 or 4. I mean, like Nico and Neighbors, Lamb, they're all like they all go off every week. So you have to. That's a pretty big mountain to climb. But I think he's that talented. And so yeah, I mean, buying Puka I'm always in for.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to like Todd said, Neighbors is obviously a much better prospect than Puka was. So you can have a little bit more assurance early on that it's not really fluky. But really, the main thing is he's doing it with fucking Daniel Jones, which is incredible because Daniel Jones is fucking terrible. If Puka did this with Daniel Jones last year, I really would put him like up there with Jefferson and Chase because like why not? It's stunning. But that and just the overall volume, like I mean, Neighbors is on pace for 220 targets. The NFL record is Marvin Harrison Sr. 205 targets back in like 2004. I mean, nobody's come like Cooper Kupp when he had that absolutely monstrous season a few years ago, had 191 targets. Neighbors is on pace for like 30 more targets than that. So and that's kind of why I just need to see him do it for a whole season, because I want to see defensive coordinators react to this a little bit, see if some of the better coordinators and defenses in the league can actually take him out of a game plan, or if he's just straight up game plan proof and he's going to get his no matter what. And if he does that for a whole season, then yeah, sure, I'll entertain putting him over Jefferson. But that's what it would take. That's
fair. Transcendence, I guess, is a fair word to potentially throw around. I think maybe a little too often, but I think he has certainly that showing that potential. Someone in a different position and a little less sexy of a name, Derrick Henry. I think it's about time we start admitting that he is also a transcendent talent, fighter of time.
At age 30, we finally admit it.
Yeah, like that's what's crazy. Like we're just like, all right, this is it. Like ever since I've been playing Dynasty, it feels like everyone's like, okay, well, he's got maybe 1 year left, or this team is on, or whatever. And he just keeps stiff arming the shit out of everybody. And I mean, I believe I saw a stat that his top speed for that touchdown, the first touchdown, the 87-yarder, was as fast as Xavier Worthy's deep catch. I believe that's what I heard.
And it was also Derrick Henry's 8th fastest of his career. So like that's how fast Derrick Henry used to be.
Nuts. The guy is 6'4", 200 250 pounds or whatever the hell he is, 230 pounds. I guess what I'm getting at is he's been cast aside and maybe he's no longer going to be cast aside. What is a price that you would still pay for him? And if you have him, I assume, first of all, that you're a strong contender, or in back to school's case, my team, Todd, a team that was trying to tank and just couldn't sell him, and is now 8-0, weirdly enough. What are you selling it for?
So first off, I'm also 8 now, so don't put too much shade. But what am I selling for? Would be a late first. What am I buying for? I'm probably not buying. But I'd probably, if somebody was like, hey, I really want him off my team, I would make sure that they weren't going to sell for anything less than like a couple twos, and I'm not getting it for a couple twos. It'd probably just be more like price enforcing.
Yeah, I only have a couple Henry shares. They're on two of my best teams. So, I mean, it's just basically a non-starter if someone asks for him. If I was in a position where I wanted to sell, basically I need a late first.
Yeah, late first.
Or equivalent value, or else like, fine, I'm going to be stubborn, you're going to be stubborn, and we're both going to not make a trade that would benefit both of us.
Brian Robinson, or Derrick Henry?
Brian Robinson? You didn't say Bijan Robinson, right? Brian Robinson.
Brian Robinson.
Yeah. I'll take Derrick Henry. But
oh, wow, okay.
I do love the way Brian Robinson looks, and again, how he's being utilized. And I think he's another guy that potentially I'm not going to label him even close to Derrick Henry, like longevity wise, but like someone that might just be like universally over or underappreciated, and value could be had. Like I remember Matt early last season talking about like, you know what, he's like kind of like, he's not the sexiest thing, but like you can add him onto a trade and get him. Like that's, I'm sure he's since traded him again, but traded him away, but
then
I think him. And then got him again. Yeah, you're right. So Brian Robinson is super fun, especially if you're a Jaden Daniels fan and believer. I think that offense is going to continue to kind of explode in comparison to their expectations. That's Scary Terry. I think he's just going to be like a guy that Jaden Daniels is a guy that kind of helps boost everybody up a little bit. And I think Brian Robinson had the talent.
Yeah, I do think it's funny. Brian Robinson is another one of those guys that I just he was cheap enough where I wish I just bought more, and I still think he's a great buy. Like it sounds super gross to pay a late first for Brian Robinson, but in the right circumstance, I would consider doing that. I think his value should be about that.
I just asked if 2 twos are Brian Robinson, so you're going straight to a late first.
So since the beginning of last season, so we're going on like 21 games. Now, Brian Robinson has outscored Bijan Robinson. So I don't know. I think Brian Robinson is probably worth a late first. The guy who I would compare him to is actually David Montgomery from a few years ago. Yeah. So if you just said like, hey, what can I buy 24-year-old David Montgomery for? And you paid a late first, you're probably not upset with that. You got like high-end RB2 play since then. So if you're looking at like a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 for the next, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, that's definitely worth a late first.
Yeah, I mean, you got a juggernaut. You can stick David Montgomery in your flex, and you are just thriving.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, yeah, I basically, if I was going to sell Brian Robinson right now, I'm definitely not considering selling him for less than a late first. Like that would be the starting point of any offer. Like if you come to me with 2 twos, no, like that's just not going to get it done. He's too productive right now, and he's young enough where you can. I mean, running back is obviously very volatile. I'm not going to like guarantee Brian Robinson is going to be a good starting running back in 2026, but it's certainly trending that way. Like every year, he just kind of shows up and does pretty good
in the same way that David Montgomery kind of trended. So yeah. I'm totally in agreement there. I think that tier probably includes, and I think that Brian Robinson is probably deserving of getting up into that tier that has guys like Kyron Williams, maybe even like James Cook, those type guys. I think it probably sounds a little bit crazy to say Brian Robinson is there, but I think it's getting
It does.
towards that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it.
All right, so let's talk. We've got a few more minutes here. Let's run through the. Let's just talk Anthony Richardson really quick. Things look really bad there. He got hurt. There may not be much we can say because Anthony Richardson is hurt, but we talked about him last week. We were dropping him almost like down into like almost to the concern level of Trevor Lawrence. I've got a couple of shares of him. Brian, we'll let you as the Colts fan give your elevator speech on him, and then we'll just kind of keep it moving.
The talent is still there. The question marks are still there. So I guess the pitch would be for Anthony Richardson would be, what were you expecting? Just overall right away dominance. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah,
sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, but Josh Allen wasn't a superstar right away either. Like, I think I wish that he ran a little bit more and didn't try and get hit so much when he ran. That's a concern for me personally. I think if he learns how to throw intermediate passes, he still has unbelievable deep accuracy at times. It's like he dropped a couple more dimes this past week before he got hurt. A lot of people are crediting Flacco for like, oh, the Pittman breakout, but in reality, a lot of that came, or a good portion of that came with Richardson in a short amount of time. So I think he still has the ability to be what we hoped for.
You're talking about the Josh Downs breakout?
That was with Flacco. Yeah, that part was with Flacco.
Oh, I didn't see any of the game. Okay.
Yeah. So Pittman, he had a couple deep passes too, and a couple other things. Pittman had 100 yards at halftime.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, but there's obviously a lot of talk of like, and I've said it jokingly before, like Flacco is the answer to like unlocking the offense. And I think it's more just Anthony Richardson not airmailing, and hopefully that happens with more experience and less injuries, but might not. I'm still concerned.
That's the thing that prevents me from kind of looking to kind of shopping for some Richardson. I don't have any shares of him. If someone was going to drop his price down to like something that's pretty affordable, I'm still a little scared off because it's not just that like, oh, he's going to play bad enough where they're going to move on from him, but he can't stay healthy now too. Now, I'm not saying like he's going to be injury prone the rest of his career, et cetera, et cetera. But like he had injury concerns as a prospect going back to Florida. Then he gets hurt like multiple times in his rookie year in a few games. Now he got hurt again. So if you put the injuries with the performance issues of completing under 50% of his passes, et cetera, it's just not a bet I want to make at a cost of like an early first, which I think people are still asking for him. So I'm just fine missing out on him. I miss out on a lot of great players. It happens. I did have him on on a team last year, and I think I traded him straight up for Jahmyr Gibbs during like a playoff push.
Yeah,
something like
working
that.
Out. Let's hop into buy or sells to close things out. Brian, give us your buy or sell of the week.
So I think there's two that I'm going to use and I'll go very quickly. Buy Rashee Rice, like we talked about. I think a lot of people are trying to do that. The sell is the yin and yang of this, and the sell is Xavier Worthy. I think he's probably going to have a boost in value in the similar time frame that like Todd was talking about. Rashee Rice potentially losing value as time goes. I think with that, if Xavier Worthy is not useless, I think he gains value pretty quickly, similar to like week one. He has a couple pop games or a couple pop plays. And to me, I would try and cash out, and I would rather have a little more than a reroll, but we'll say a reroll. So a 1+ something, and I'm selling him. And I think that will happen in places in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, makes sense. My buy of the week is someone that I've never been especially high on, and Todd was on the right side of history last year, taking him from me for Kyle Pitts. But that's TJ Hawkinson, and it's basically twofold. One of the reasons for buying is because the tight end is landscape is such a wasteland that one of the knocks on Hawkinson is he doesn't really have like the elite ceiling always that some of the other top tight ends have. And now that's no longer a concern because 15 points a game is an elite ceiling for a tight end in this landscape. So that's one. And then also Minnesota as an offense is just humming. So I kind of always want to get in on any part of that offense that I think is cost efficient. And so, before Hawkinson comes back, I would try and buy him now, where theoretically he should have a slightly discounted price than what his price is going to look like a month from now. So go buy some TJ Hawkinson. What about you, Todd?
So I'm going to go with Drake May and JJ McCarthy. I think as we kind of head into bye weeks here, people are thinking, okay, I need to fill out my roster. Maybe they're going through some injuries. So can you sell some of these, maybe a running back that we're talking about, like a Ken Walker? Can you sell a receiver, maybe along the lines of George Pickens or something, to someone that needs to fill out the roster to acquire Drake May? So that's my buy of the week. And then JJ McCarthy as well. I think maybe on the lesser side, I wouldn't probably buy it
I like that.
at quite the high price, but those are the two that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I like
All right,
that.
And that wraps us up. Dynasty Market Watch. Thanks for joining us. Brian, you can find him on Twitter at Brian_Leary1. You can find Matt at Dynasty Peasant, and I'm Todd at Dynasty SFlex. Also, if you want to hop into our Discord, just message one of us on Twitter. It's free. Feel free to join. Thanks for joining.
Imaginary players, they make